There is a terrifying, universally accepted delusion that we all collectively participate in every single day. We walk down crowded city streets. We sit in dimly lit coffee shops. We browse the aisles of dusty bookstores. And we genuinely believe that we are anonymous. We believe that our inner lives, our deepest insecurities, and our most desperate desires are locked safely away behind our ribs, inaccessible to the strangers passing us by. But anonymity in the modern world is a myth. It is a fairy tale we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night. The truth is, you are constantly bleeding information. You are leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs so wide and so brightly illuminated that anyone with modicum of patience and a Wi-Fi connection can follow it directly to your front door. You don't need a private investigator to map the architecture of a human soul anymore. You just need a name. And on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in Seattle, the bell above the door of my independent bookstore chimed, and you walked in, completely unaware that you were about to hand me the keys to your entire existence. My name is Elias. I spend my days surrounded by the smell of decaying paper and the quiet, heavy silence of literature. People who read are a specific breed. They are looking for an escape, a fantasy, a way to experience life without the messy, painful consequences of actual human interaction. When you walked through that door, you brought the cold, damp scent of city raining with you. You shook out your umbrella, your dark hair clinging to your cheeks, and you looked around the store not with the casual boredom of a tourist, but with the hungry, searching eyes of someone who desperately needed to be transported. You were beautiful, yes, but it wasn't a loud, demanding beauty. It was a quiet, fragile beauty. The kind of beauty that looks like it needs to be protected. You wandered the aisle for 45 minutes. I know because I timed you. I watched the way your fingers grazed the spines of the books. I watched you pick up a copy of a translated French novel, read the first page, and gently place it back. You didn't know it, but you were already telling me exactly who you were. When you finally approached the counter, you placed a collection of obscure, melancholic poetry between us. It was a brilliant, tragic selection. It told me you were romantic, prone to sadness, and probably feeling incredibly isolated. You didn't look at me when I scanned the barcode. You were looking at your phone, your thumb scrolling mindlessly through an endless feed of other people's curated lives. I told you the total. You handed me your credit card. The plastic was warm from your hand. I looked down at the embossed silver lettering. Clara Hayes. 2 words. 11 letters. That was all it took. I handed the card back to you, offering a polite, practiced smile that didn't reach my eyes. Have a good afternoon, Clara, I said. You barely registered that I had used your name. You just offered a tight, distracted smile, took your book, and walked back out into the freezing rain. You thought that was the end of our transaction. You thought you were just buying a book. But as the heavy glass door clicked shut behind you, I turned to the computer monitor behind the register. I opened a blank search engine, and I typed your name into the void. It took me less than 3 minutes to find your Instagram profile. It wasn't private. That is the first, most fatal mistake people make. You want to be seen. You crave the validation of strangers, the little bursts of dopamine that come with every digital heart, completely ignorant of the predators swimming in those same waters. I scrolled through your grid, and the geography of your life unfolded before me like a beautifully detailed map. I saw the coffee shop you visited every morning, a pretentious, overpriced cafe 3 blocks from your apartment. I saw the pictures of your cat, a rescue named Hemingway. I saw the heavily filtered photographs of you smiling with a group of girls who looked like they secretly hated you, the kind of toxic, competitive friendships that thrive in this city. And then I saw him, the boyfriend. His name was Ben. He was tagged in dozens of photos, but he never looked like he actually wanted to be there. He was a cliche, a struggling musician with a jawline that compensated for a profound lack of ambition. In every picture, you were leaning into him, desperate for his attention, and he was leaning away, staring at the camera with the dull, arrogant gaze of a man who knows he is settling. I sat in the quiet, dim light of the bookstore, staring at the glowing screen, and I felt a profound, almost overwhelming surge of clarity. Ben didn't appreciate you. Your friends didn't understand you. You were a fragile, beautiful bird trapped in a cage of mediocrity, surrounded by people who were slowly draining the life out of you. You needed someone who could actually see you. You needed someone who would read the poetry you bought, who would understand the quiet, melancholic ache behind your eyes. You needed someone who would burn down the world just to keep you warm. You didn't know it yet, Clara, but the moment you handed me that credit card, the universe finally aligned. I wasn't just a guy behind a cash register. I was the architect of your salvation. And as I zoomed in on the reflection of the street sign in one of your selfies, pinpointing the exact location of your apartment building, I made a silent, unshakable vow. I was going to remove every single obstacle in your path. I was going to become the perfect man for you. And I was never, ever going to let you go. The infiltration of a human life requires the meticulous, agonizing patience of a sniper. You cannot simply walk up to a woman and declare yourself her soulmate. That triggers the evolutionary alarm systems designed to keep predators at bay. You have to manufacture serendipity. You have to engineer coincidences so perfectly calibrated that she believes the universe is actively conspiring to bring the two of you together. I spent the next 2 weeks becoming a ghost in your physical reality, mirroring the exhaustive digital intelligence I had gathered. I learned your rhythms. I knew that every Tuesday and Thursday, you left your apartment at exactly 7:45 a.m. to walk to the subway. I knew that you ordered a medium oat milk latte with half a pump of vanilla because you had complained on Twitter 3 weeks ago that the barista always made it too sweet. I knew that you were currently reading Joan Didion because you had posted a melancholic quote about grief on your story at 2 in the morning. You were an open book, Clara, and I was reading you cover to cover. The first engineered collision happened on a crisp, gray Thursday morning. The air was biting, the city moving with its usual chaotic velocity. I was sitting at a corner table in your overpriced cafe, wearing a thick, charcoal sweater that I knew from my research was exactly the aesthetic you found attractive. I had a worn, vintage paperback copy of Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking resting on the table in front of me, perfectly angled so the title was visible. I watched you walk through the door. You looked exhausted, your shoulders slumped, the dark circles under your eyes betraying another sleepless night, undoubtedly caused by whatever fresh disappointment Ben had inflicted upon you. You stood in line, shifting your weight, staring blankly ahead. As you turned away from the counter, holding your oat milk latte, I timed my movement with microscopic precision. I stood up, pretending to be deeply engrossed in a text message, and stepped directly into your path. The collision was soft but effective. Your coffee splashed slightly, a few warm drops hitting my sweater. "Oh my God, I am so sorry." You gasped, your eyes widening in sudden, panicked embarrassment. You reached out instinctively, as if to wipe the stain away, before pulling your hand back. I looked up, letting a warm, entirely disarming smile spread across my face. I didn't look angry. I looked enchanted. "It's completely my fault," I said, my voice smooth and calming. I was reading and walking, which is a dangerous combination in this city. "Please, don't worry about it." You looked at me, the panic slowly subsiding, replaced by a flickering curiosity. And then, your eyes darted to the table behind me. You saw the book, Didion. You breathed, a sudden, genuine spark of recognition lighting up your features. "You're reading The Year of Magical Thinking." "I am," I replied, feigning a slight, self-deprecating embarrassment. "It's heavy, but beautifully written." She has a way of articulating grief that feels almost invasive, doesn't she? It was the exact phrase you had used in a blog post 2 years ago. The words resonated in your chest like a tuning fork. You stare at me, the chaotic noise of the cafe completely falling away. In that singular moment, you didn't see a stranger who had just bumped into you. You saw a reflection of your own intellectual and emotional desires. You saw a man who understood the specific, melancholic frequency on which you operated. "I bought a book from you," you said suddenly, your brow furrowing as the facial recognition finally clicked into place. "You work at that independent store in Pioneer Square, the one with the amazing poetry section." Guilty as charged, I smiled, extending my hand. "I'm Elias, and you bought the translated French collection. Excellent choice, by the way." You took my hand. Your skin was soft, your pulse fluttering gently against my fingertips. "I'm Clara," you said, a soft, genuine smile finally breaking through the exhaustion on your face. That was the spark. The manufactured serendipity had successfully breached the perimeter of your defenses. We stood in the middle of the crowded cafe and talked for 20 minutes. I didn't push. I didn't ask for your number. I simply let you experience the intoxicating high of being completely, utterly understood by a handsome stranger. I mirrored your body language. I validated your opinions. I became the perfect, custom-built puzzle piece designed to fit the exact shape of your loneliness. When you finally realized you were late for work, you looked genuinely reluctant to leave. You walked out the door, turning back to look at me through the glass, offering a small, shy wave. I watched you disappear into the sea of pedestrians, a cold, triumphant satisfaction settling deep in my chest. The hook was set, but as I sat back down at the table, staring at the wet stain on my sweater, the reality of the situation rapidly crystallized. Being the perfect man wasn't enough. You were still tethered to a toxic, rotting anchor. You were still going home to Ben. You were still allowing a mediocre, arrogant musician to siphon away your light. If I was going to build a sanctuary for you, I couldn't just decorate the interior. I had to clear the land. I had to remove the rot. Ben was a disease that was slowly killing you, and as I watched you walk away, I knew with absolute, chilling certainty that the time for observation was over. The time for intervention had begun. The anatomy of a murder, when executed not out of malice but out of profound protective love, is a surprisingly clinical endeavor. People assume taking a life requires a chaotic, emotional explosion, a sudden blinding rage that overrides human morality. But when you are removing a tumor to save the patient, there is no rage. There is only a cold, mechanical necessity. Ben was a tumor. He was a malignant, narcissistic growth feeding on your empathy. I had spent the past 3 weeks tracking his movements, mapping his pathetic, predictable existence. He spent his days sleeping in your apartment, contributing nothing, and his nights playing terrible music at dive bars, surrounded by sycophants and women who were desperate enough to mistake his arrogance for tortured genius. But the true depth of his betrayal, the absolute confirmation of his death sentence, was discovered entirely by accident. I was sitting in my car, parked across the street from the grimy, neon-lit bar where his band was playing a Tuesday night set. I was running a clone version of his messaging app, a terrifyingly simple technological feat, if you know the right dark web forms and have access to the target's phone number and carrier data. I was monitoring his communications, looking for leverage, looking for a way to break you two apart without getting my hands dirty. The screen illuminated with a new message. It wasn't from you, Clara. It was from a contact saved as Sarah Vocals. "Are you coming over after the set? My roommate is out of town. The bed is empty." I watched the blinking cursor as Ben typed his reply. Sitting just 50 feet away inside the bar. "Be there in 30. Don't fall asleep." A cold, absolute fury spiked in my veins. You were at home, Clara. You had worked a 10-hour shift at the design firm, and you were sitting in your apartment, probably worrying about him, probably feeling guilty for not supporting his art tonight. And he was casually, effortlessly arranging to betray you. He didn't just ignore your value. He actively mocked it. He was a parasite, and the universe had appointed me the exterminator. I didn't wait for him to go to Sarah's apartment. That was too messy. Too many variables. I waited until the bar closed, until the neon signs flickered and died, plunging the alleyway behind the venue into deep, impenetrable shadow. I knew Ben's routine. He always parked his beat-up Honda in the alley to avoid paying for street parking. He was cheap, lazy, and predictable. I stepped out of my car, pulling a heavy, dark beanie low over my forehead and slipping on a pair of surgical-grade latex gloves. I walked into the alley. The darkness swallowed me completely. The air smelled of stale beer, rotting garbage, and freezing rain. I stood perfectly still behind a massive industrial dumpster, my breathing slow and controlled. 5 minutes later, the heavy metal fire door of the bar groaned open. Ben stumbled out into the alley, carrying his guitar case, humming a tuneless melody. He was intoxicated, his movements sluggish and uncoordinated. He fumbled in his pockets for his car keys, cursing softly under his breath. He was entirely oblivious to the lethal force standing less than 10 feet away. I didn't use a gun. A gun is loud, chaotic, and leaves a ballistic signature that connects the weapon to the shooter. I stepped out from behind the dumpster, my footsteps completely silent on the wet asphalt. I was holding a heavy, solid steel wrench I had taken from the basement of the bookstore. It was a tool of blunt, absolute finality. Ben heard the scrape of my boot a fraction of a second before I swung. He turned his head, his eyes widening in sudden, drunken confusion. He didn't even have time to scream. The heavy steel connected with the side of his skull with a sickening, wet crunch. The kinetic energy of the impact was staggering. Ben's eyes rolled back into his head, the guitar case slipping from his fingers, clattering loudly onto the pavement. He crumpled to the ground instantly, a heavy, lifeless sack of flesh and bone. I stood over him, my chest heaving, the adrenaline rushing through my system like a tidal wave of electricity. I looked down at his face, distorted by the impact, blood already pooling darkly on the wet asphalt. I expected to feel a surge of guilt, a sudden, horrifying realization of what I had done. But as I stared at the man who had caused you so much pain, Clara, I felt absolutely nothing. No remorse, no panic, just a profound, immaculate sense of relief. The obstacle was removed. The cage door was open. I worked with terrifying mechanical efficiency. I dragged his heavy, limp body behind the dumpster out of the immediate line of sight. I retrieved a thick, heavy-duty industrial trash bag from my coat pocket and pulled it over his head and torso to contain the blood. I hauled him into the trunk of my car, a strenuous, agonizing physical effort that left me gasping for air. I picked up his guitar case, his keys, and his phone. I scrubbed the blood stain on the asphalt with a bottle of concentrated bleach I had brought specifically for this purpose, letting the freezing rain wash the chemicals into the storm drain. I drove 2 hours north, deep into the isolated, heavily forested foothills of the Cascade Mountains. I found an abandoned logging road, a place untouched by human traffic for decades. I spent 3 hours digging a grave in the freezing, semi-frozen earth. It was exhausting, brutal work, but every strike of the shovel was an act of devotion. I buried him deep, covering the earth with heavy rocks and dead branches, erasing his physical existence from the world. As I drove back into the city, the sky lightening with the pale gray promise of dawn, I pulled Ben's phone from my pocket. I unlocked it, utilizing the passcode I had observed him typing a dozen times. I opened the messaging app, navigated to your contact, and typed one final, devastating lie. Clara, I can't do this anymore. You're suffocating me. I need space to figure out my music. I'm leaving the city for a while. Don't try to find me. We're done. I hit send, then rolled down the window as I drove over the massive steel bridge spanning the Puget Sound. I threw the phone and the guitar case into the dark, churning waters below, watching them vanish into the abyss. It was cruel. It was going to break your heart. But a clean, sudden break heals infinitely faster than a slow, rotting infection. You were going to be devastated. Clara, you were going to cry, and you were going to feel entirely alone in the world. And that was exactly when I was going to step out of the shadows, wrap my arms around you, and show you what true, unadulterated love actually looks like. Grief is a powerful, blinding narcotic. It distorts your perception of reality, making you profoundly vulnerable to anyone offering a lifeline in the dark. The weeks following Ben's sudden, brutal abandonment were a masterpiece of calculated emotional infiltration. You were a shattered vase, Clara, and I was the glue, painstakingly piecing you back together, making sure that my fingerprints were permanently embedded in the cracks. You came into the bookstore 3 days after he sent the text. You looked like a ghost. Your eyes were red and swollen, your movements fragile and hesitant. You walked directly to the poetry section, seeking solace in the melancholic words of dead writers. I waited. I let you browse, giving you the illusion of space, before I quietly approached, carrying a cup of herbal tea I had brewed in the back room. You look like you could use this, I said softly, holding out the warm mug. You looked up at me, a tear instantly spilling over your eyelashes. The simple, unexpected act of kindness was a final strike against your crumbling defenses. You took the tea, your hand shaking and the dam broke. You sat on a small wooden stool in the corner of the store and told me everything. You told me about the text. You told me about the sudden, agonizing rejection. You cried, pouring out years of repressed insecurity and exhaustion, completely unaware that you were unburdening your soul to the man who had buried the source of your pain in the frozen earth of the Cascade Mountains. I listened. I was the perfect, empathetic mirror. I didn't offer cheap platitudes. I didn't try to fix it. I simply validated your agony. He was a fool, I whispered, reaching out to gently wipe a tear from your cheek. He was terrified of your light, Clara. Small men always run from things they can't control. You deserve someone who looks at you and sees the entire universe. It was exactly what you needed to hear. The transition from grieving ex-girlfriend to devoted partner was seamless. We started dating, but it didn't feel like dating. It felt like two magnets snapping together with undeniable gravitational force. Our relationship was flawless because I had the cheat codes to your soul. I knew your favorite restaurants before you suggested them. I bought you thoughtful, hyper-specific gifts based on fleeting desires you had expressed on social media years ago. I anticipated your moods, cooking you dinner on the nights I knew your boss had been demanding, giving you space on the days you felt overwhelmed. You told your friends I was a mind reader. You told your mother I was a miracle. You looked at me with an absolute, blinding adoration that fueled a dark, triumphant fire in my chest. You were safe. You were mine. But absolute control is an illusion. The human element introduces a chaotic variable that no amount of surveillance can entirely predict. We have been living together in your apartment for 6 months. It was a domestic paradise. But I had made a fatal, arrogant mistake. I had grown complacent. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I had run to a grocery store to buy the ingredients for a complex Italian dish you had mentioned craving. You were staying behind to clean the apartment. The mundane domesticity of the moment lowered my guard. I had left my heavy, locked leather messenger bag tucked into the back of my closet. It was a bag I used for my projects. It was the bag that contained the physical artifacts of my devotion. You were looking for a spare shoebox to store winter clothes. You opened the back of the closet, pushing aside my coats, and your hand brushed against the heavy leather. You noticed a small brass padlock was unclasped, a momentary, catastrophic lapse in my meticulous routine. Curiosity is a lethal instinct. You pulled the bag out, sitting cross-legged on the bedroom floor, and lifted the heavy leather flap. I wasn't there to see the color drain from your face. I wasn't there to hear the sharp, terrified gasp tear from your throat as the horrifying reality of your perfect relationship spilled out onto the carpet. You didn't find weapons. You found something infinitely worse. You found a museum of your own violation. You found a spare key to your apartment that I had copied months before we even started dating, allowing me to stand in your bedroom and watch you sleep while Ben was out drinking. You found a meticulously maintained notebook filled with microscopic handwriting, detailing your every movement, your passwords, your financial information, and transcripts of your private conversations. You found a small plastic bag containing a lock of your hair that I had taken from your brush. But the object that completely shattered your reality, the object that turned your blood to ice, was resting at the very bottom of the bag. It was Ben's phone, the phone I had thrown off the bridge. Or at least, the phone I intended to throw off the bridge. I had kept it, a trophy, a physical reminder of the obstacle I had conquered to win you. I walked to the front door of the apartment, carrying 2 bags of groceries, a genuine, relaxed smile on my face. "Clara, I found the imported tomatoes you were talking about," I called out, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. The apartment was terrifyingly silent. "Clara?" I asked, a sudden, cold spike of anxiety piercing my chest. I walked down the hallway toward the bedroom. I stopped in the doorway. The groceries, the Italian dinner, the perfect domestic illusion instantly vaporized into ash. You were standing in the center of the room. The contents of my leather bag were scattered across the floor like evidence at a crime scene. You were holding Ben's phone in your trembling hands. You looked up at me, your eyes wide, dilated, filled with profound, unadulterated terror that I had never wanted you to feel. You weren't looking at your perfect boyfriend anymore. You were looking at a monster. "Elias," you whispered, your voice cracking, backing away until you hit the wall. "What is this? Why? Why do you have Ben's phone? The police said he vanished. Why do you have his phone?" The air in the room turned thick and suffocating. The carefully constructed stage play was over. The curtain had fallen, and the audience was screaming. I looked at you, the beautiful, fragile woman I had killed for, the woman I had built an entire universe to protect, and I realized with absolute, chilling clarity that the hardest part of the plan was just beginning. You knew the truth, and now I had to convince you that the truth was an act of love. The moment a psychological illusion shatters, the silence that follows is deafening. It is a sound of reality completely collapsing in on itself. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, staring at you backed against the wall, clutching Ben's dead phone to your chest like a shield. Your breathing was erratic, shallow, bordering on hyperventilation. The terror in your eyes was absolute, a raw, primal panic that tore at the very fabric of my devotion. I didn't want you to fear me. I wanted you to understand. I took a slow, deliberate step into the room, raising my hands in a gesture of calm surrender. "Clara, please. Just breathe. Let me explain." "Stay away from me," you shrieked, a sound of pure, visceral horror. You grabbed a heavy glass perfume bottle from the vanity, holding it up like a weapon, your hand shaking violently. "You killed him. You killed Ben. Oh my God, the text message. He didn't leave me. You sent that message. You murdered him and you took his phone. I saved you." I shouted, the volume of my voice startling us both, the carefully maintained facade of the gentle, perfect boyfriend cracking to reveal the obsessive, burning intensity beneath. I didn't retreat. I closed the distance between us, my eyes locking onto yours, demanding that you see the profound depth of my sacrifice. He was destroying you, Clara. He was cheating on you. He was using you as a safety net while he chased his pathetic, narcissistic dreams. He was a cancer in your life, and I excised him. I did it for you. Everything I did, every single thing in that bag, I did to protect you, to know you, to build a world where you would never have to feel that kind of pain again. You stared at me, the perfume bottle trembling in your grip. You were trying to process the absolute insanity of my logic, trying to reconcile the gentleman who brought you herbal tea with the cold-blooded predator who buried your ex-boyfriend in the woods. You're insane, you whispered, tears streaming down your face, your voice hollow and broken. You're a psychopath. You stalked me. You broke into my apartment. You mapped my entire life before I even knew your name. That isn't love, Elias. That is a disease. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. A disease? To call my devotion a disease was a profound insult to the meticulous, agonizing effort I had poured into our relationship. I had given you perfection. I had given you absolute, unwavering loyalty. You didn't think it was a disease when I held you while you cried. I fired back, my voice dropping to a dangerous, low register. You didn't think it was a disease when I anticipated your every need, when I made you feel safer and more loved than you have ever felt in your entire life. You loved the result. Clara, you just don't have the stomach for the mechanics of how that perfection was achieved. I lunged forward. It was a sudden, violent movement born of desperation. I grabbed your wrist, twisting it sharply. The glass perfume bottle fell from your fingers, shattered on the hardwood floor, filling the room with the suffocating scent of jasmine and roses. You screamed, kicking and thrashing, but I was stronger. I pinned your arms to your sides, backing you against the wall, my face inches from yours. I could feel your heart hammering against my chest like a trapped bird. I am not going to let you destroy this. I hissed, my breath hot against your cheek. I am not going to let you throw away the only real, pure thing in your life because you are terrified of the truth. We belong together. The universe brought you into my bookstore for a reason. You are mine, Clara, and I am never, ever going to let you go. You stopped fighting. The physical resistance drained out of your body, replaced by a cold, absolute realization of the danger you were in. You looked into my eyes, and you finally understood that there was no reasoning with me. There was no argument that could penetrate the impenetrable armor of my obsession. I was the architect of your reality, and I had just locked the doors. I didn't hurt you. I would never hurt you. That is a tragic misunderstanding of my nature. I dragged you, sobbing and completely broken, out of the apartment. I put you in my car. We drove away from the city, away from the prying eyes of your friends and the superficial digital world that had exposed you to me in the first place. I took you to a place where we could be alone, a place where you could finally, truly appreciate the depth of my love without the distracting noise of the outside world. I had prepared it months in advance. An insurance policy against exactly this kind of misunderstanding. It is a beautiful room. It is located in the soundproof basement beneath the bookstore. The walls are lined with your favorite books. The lighting is soft and warm. I brought your favorite clothes, your favorite tea. It is a sanctuary, a perfect, impenetrable golden cage. You sit on the edge of the plush bed I bought for you, staring blankly at the reinforced steel door. You don't scream anymore. The soundproofing renders it completely useless. You just wait. You wait for me to bring you your meals. You wait for me to sit beside you and read poetry aloud, stroking your hair, whispering promises of a future where you will eventually understand, where you will eventually forgive me, and you will, Clara. Time is the ultimate solvent. Eventually, the anger will fade, the fear will subside. You will realize that the outside world is cold, chaotic, and full of people who will betray you. You will realize that I am the only constant, the only absolute. I am the man who killed for you. I am the man who built a universe specifically for you. You think you are a prisoner, But the terrifying, undeniable truth is that you have never been more protected. You have never been more cherished. The digital ghosts are gone. The toxic friends are gone. It is just you and me and the heavy, silent weight of love, so profound it requires a lock and a key to survive. And that is the psychological, skin-crawling reality of you. It is a story that forces us to confront the terrifying illusion of privacy in the modern age, and the razor-thin line between a sweeping, romantic gesture and a clinical, sociopathic obsession. It proves that the most dangerous predators don't wear masks or hide in dark alleyways. They smile at you from behind a cash register, they read your favorite books, and they use your own digital footprint to build the perfect cage. If the realization that your social media profile could be a blueprint for a stalker makes you want to delete every app on your phone, if the chilling, claustrophobic ending of this story left you staring blankly at the screen, then you are exactly where you belong. You are a moon whisperer. Do not scroll away. Look right down at that subscribe button. It is the only thing tethering you to reality when the stories get this dark. Click it. Join our community. We dissect the most psychologically twisted, brain-melting thrillers on the internet, and we bring the absolute madness directly to your headphones. And that bell icon? Smash it, because the next story I have lined up for you involves a woman who accepts a dream job as a live-in nanny for a wealthy family, only to discover that the children she is caring for might not be entirely human. You absolutely do not want to miss it. Hit the like button if you think Elias is the most terrifying kind of villain, because he genuinely believes he is a hero. Hit the like button if you are going to go check your privacy settings immediately after this video ends. Let the algorithm know that true thriller fans demand the darkest stories on the internet. I have one final question for you. A true, brutal test of your own digital footprint. Tell me in the comments below. If a stranger spent 1 hour looking at your public social media profiles right now, what is the most terrifyingly accurate thing they could figure out about your daily routine? Be completely honest. I will be reading and reacting to every single answer. I'm Friend, and remember, the next time a stranger bumps into you and drops your favorite book, keep walking, good night, and change your passwords.